Listen to this advice from one of the absolute greatest direct response marketers on the planet. I'm talking about my good friend and one of my early mentors, Mark Ford. I brought Mark in to do a little virtual kind of training session for our top one mastermind and private client group. And I asked Mark, what would you share with these folks about competing in a crowded and saturated marketplace? And I want you to listen to what Mark said. Now, real quick, if you don't know who Mark is really the marketing genius behind the $1.5 billion a year Agora publishing empire. Mark is an extremely successful author, real estate investor. He is a true Renaissance man. This is a guy who has achieved an enormous amount thanks to this business. So when Mark speaks, I listen. In fact, Mark was the guy that introduced me many years ago to the concept of the big marketing idea and sent me off on this 6-year journey to learn all about it. And so I want you to listen to what Mark tells my top one group about competing in a crowded and saturated marketplace. Enjoy.
I've never cared about competition. I've always wanted, in fact, the first thing I did when we got into the newsletter business was to create the Newsletter Publishers Roundtable, in which I brought everybody together for a couple of days, and the rule was we would tell you our best ideas and our worst ideas. And I was always completely frank. There were a couple of guys that attended that would never, they would give you a best idea, and it was idea. I've been following that. I know you did something way more interesting, but I never cared because I always felt like that if the exchange were greater, I would benefit more because I always thought I could outwit them, or I would, and I didn't even care if I came up number one. I never wanted to be number one. To me, it's like a ridiculous idea. I mean, you're going to get on the throne for 6 minutes, and then you're going to be number 2, number 13, number 82. What way is that? Look, people in England are perfectly happy not being number one anymore. They were number one. So anyway, you get the idea. So part of it is I've had partners who are like obsessed about the competition and staying in front of them. And I think it's a total waste of time, totally self-destructive and just miserable. So, but the other part of it is, if I understand your question, is when the business is very competitive and there are a lot of people in it, believe it or not, I still say share. I was in the business once. It was the 900 business for a contest. I don't know if that was before your time even. You would send people postcards. You want to play a contest, and they get on 900. That business was so corrupt. There were like 8 people in the business. My partner got us into it. The moment you had a postcard that worked, literally within a week, and this is direct mail, so today it would be within a minute, there was the exact same postcard coming out with their address on it. But you know what? Somehow we made it work. I didn't worry about them knocking us off. I just thought, oh, look, the more they knock me off, it only means that I'm coming up. And if you got into first place in that business, you stayed in first place. So the only way you could go up, there were 8 of us. We were dominating the market. The only way you could go up one level was to come up with the first postcard that was a breakthrough. And so we always stayed at number 1 or number 2, just because we weren't worried about, we weren't fighting each other about people knocking us off. So, but that is still not what I think you might have been asking, which is, what do you do when you are in a competitive environment and there are so many people? When you try to distinguish yourself, there's 2 steps to it. One is your great idea about distinguishing yourself. You got to make sure that everybody isn't really already doing it. Some people think, oh, this is special. And you say, well, isn't that like what everybody else is doing? Oh, no, my thing's special. And it doesn't work. And the other thing is that you find out, no, nobody's doing it. It's really unique. And then when you test it, it doesn't really work that well. And so then but obviously the market is wrong. And so you keep pushing. One rule I found when I was doing a ton of testing was, if I had a new idea that I thought was unique and would separate me, it had to at least double response rates or I'd reject it, because it's too, you're in love with the idea already. And part of you is trying to prove that you're right. And that you can spend an awful lot of time and money, mediocre product alive by doing that. So when it's very competitive like that, and I'm trying to find a way to distinguish my product from other people's products, I would just come up with a lot of different unique propositions and find a way to test them as cheaply and quickly as you can almost with the goal of discarding them, because if you come up with, you need 7 great ideas before one turns out to be great. And the other thing I've always known is that if you're a great idea, generally speaking, maybe some exceptions, unless you think your idea is great, it's not great. When you have doubts, those two, this is unfortunate. So you need to become like an idea machine, like J. Abraham is, and James Altucher talks about. You need to just, and I don't think it's a question of necessarily of high IQ. Look, we got to face it. Everybody that's listening to us has a high IQ above 100, and if you don't, well, you'll figure it out. But you need to be smart. But you don't need to be a genius. You just need to be smart and give yourself permission to try different things. And I've had a lot of partners who weren't brilliant, but they were smart and they just kept trying. Nothing but in terms of new ideas is what is the point, not just, you don't want to dish out. There are 3 things you don't want to dish out in your business. And one of them is the ability to figure out how to bring in new customers. Once you give that away, then you're a passive partner in your business and you're not needed anymore. You better make sure that you've got controlling interest in the business, because it'll be taken away from you.
I love it. You packed so much in there. There's so much. Like, number one, one of the things that I saw right away with Agora as a whole, from not only when we were in Nicaragua at the roundtable thing, but just what Bill shared at the beginning about Agora, like that give, like, let's share, let's swap, let's exchange ideas, rising tides, lift all boats, so to speak. The fact that you talked about you got to have lots of ideas that 7 out of 10 aren't going to work, and so you've got to generate a lot of ideas. You've got to be willing to test a lot of ideas. And I remember, you probably don't remember this for various reasons that night, but I remember you sharing about testing, and how I think it was Rich Sheffrin, you, the 3 of us, and
Right.
we were talking about whatever, way back, button color and raising it by 1%. And you said, like, well, you're wasting your time if you're not testing the things that scream instead of the things that whisper. Like, or test something that you think could double response, not the little tiny things.